This is the Decahedron Podcast with Joe and James, two old dudes talking about RPG stuff.
Hello, Joseph.
Hey, James, what are we talking about this week?
We're talking about what name we use for the person running the game.
I knew what we were talking about because it was on our list. What I did was I put together this little list. I figured we'd just go through the list and we would talk about that name. If we like it, if we don't like it, all that fun stuff. The first one, I put them in alphabetical order. The first one was from Steve Jackson's old role-playing game called Toon, where you play cartoon characters in a cartoon world. It was a silly game. I played it once. Not my cup of tea, but they call the person running the game the animator.
That one gets into some weird connotations, but for a cartoon, that actually works.
So animator, I think it's silly, but Toon is a very silly game, so it fits. The next one from Paranoia, one of my favorite settings, Citizen, they call the game master the computer.
For that game, and me and you did try it, computer. That one doesn't fit. I would think more like AI, artificial intelligence, would be a more fitting thing.
It makes sense in the game world because the computer is your friend. The computer is psychotic and the computer is out to kill you. So it all makes sense.
Isn't it out to kill everyone but the one person who tells on everyone?
Yeah, but eventually it will try to kill them. I mean, it's the computer. It's crazy.
Okay, and the next one?
So the next one, from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, they called their GM the director.
From the show, I can see why they chose that.
They chose it because they're going for a cinematic feel, and they don't want it to be a game master. They want it to be a director, someone who's directing the story.
They're looking for a 1-hour TV show, in other words.
Yeah, episodic, but with story arcs, yeah.
It fits for it. I couldn't think of anything better myself.
I would just call it a game master. I don't know why everyone needs their own names. It really irritates me. Unless you have a very good reason or you're doing something really different.
Well, I've been thinking on this part of what you just asked. It's more that the people running the game wants to be associated with the game itself, not just being called a game master. That's why I think they have different names. And we're going to get to one. There's one you already missed, and I'll get to it at the end of your list.
Really? Huh. I wonder what it is. We'll get there. All right. Well, the next one is the second oldest title on the list, maybe? Third oldest. Dungeon Master. DM.
I love that. It fit at the time the game was coming out because today we run a lot of adventures through the cities and in the woods and other concepts. But back then, it was the dungeon crawl, the biggest thing that most people did.
So for me, I have a love-hate relationship with this name. I think it might be the first term we used. I don't remember we used this or referee. I would have to look at the Holmes book to know for sure. But it's definitely associated with our early playing days. So I like it for that concept. It's history. It's Game Master. We'll get to that one separately in a little bit when we come to it. Game Master was a term that was used in wargaming. So someone just said, hey, well, this is Dungeons & Dragons. They're not a Game Master. They're a Dungeon Master. It's great. And it was done by fans. It was done by the community, which is great. But then TSR kind of claimed ownership over it. And if you try to use that, at least back then, they would say, that's a trademark and you can't. And that really irritates me that they took this term that they didn't even create. They claim ownership and nobody else can use it because it's theirs. Even if that's not the case anymore, it has all this legal overhead that I just don't want to deal with. So any game I'm writing, I will never use that term. I almost never use it in writing because of that stuff. Next term is actually, we just talked about it, is Game Master. It actually predates Dungeon Master, but then it became back in use because, like I said, all those legal wranglings by TSR. So people needed something to call it. So they called it a Game Master. It's legally safe. It's generic. It works particularly well for like GURPS because who knows what you're going to be playing in GURPS. You might be playing dungeons. You might be playing spaceships. I like this term. It's not my favorite of the list. I have two others I like better. However, this is the most common in usage. And so for the things I'm currently writing, Lucky 7, stuff like that, I use Game Master.
It's not my favorite term, more on the concept I mentioned earlier about when the person tells me what they are, it gives me a clue of what game they're playing. That's the only reason I don't like Game Master. Game Master is just a very generic term.
And that's what I like about it. I GM for GURPS. I shouldn't say that. I haven't run a GURPS game in years, but a lot of my gaming history was GURPS. So that's what comes out of my mouth a lot.
It's a general term, so it does work for any game. It's just not my favorite.
All right. Next one up is Judge.
Let me guess. I cannot think of it. Dredd. Judge Dredd.
You know, when I wrote that on the list, I was like, I wonder, but that's actually a gap in my gaming collection. I do not have the Judge Dredd role-playing game, so I don't know what they called it. But Judge was mainly started by like Bob Bledsoe for Judges Guild for those products he was coming out. And I keep looking for it online, but he had this great article about why he was calling the DM, the GM, the referee a judge. And it's because they had to be fair and impartial, and they had to adjudicate fairly. They had to look at all the facts and come to a conclusion. And it's a wonderful, excellent little paragraph. And I can never find it, and it drives me crazy. And for that reason, I love this name. This is actually my favorite name for those reasons. But there's a but.
Mm-hmm.
But Bob Bledsoe died. The company's being run by the son or the grandson. I can't remember now. And just like a year or two ago, there was all this controversy. We're not going to get into it. There was all this controversy, though, about stuff, very politically incorrect stuff that he was posting online. And it's stuff I don't even want to be seen to support. And generally, I'm not a person who's going to look at something and say, okay, let me research your entire life to see if I should support, if I should read this book, or if I should listen to your album or anything like that. If I like the music, I'm going to listen to it. If I don't, I'm not. If I like the book, I'm going to read it. I'm not going to research your life story to find something and say, no, I'm not reading you.
Hold on. One thing. I want to throw one thing out there. You may cut it out. I know it already. And this is on a book subject, and I won't bring up the author's name. There's quite a few authors I've read, and I know you read the older authors, but one of my favorite authors died several years ago, and it brought up all his political dealings of how he looked at the world. I loved his books. What he wrote, I loved. His political side wasn't my favorite, but I understand when you say you try to stay out of it, but it is. Good writers are insane in most cases, even game designers.
Everybody's insane. But anyway, that's how I feel about the word judge. How do you feel about the word judge?
I like it to a point. I have talked to several friends on a subject when I was trying to explain D&D to newcomers. The person running the game is not there to kill everyone. This is a game where it's supposed to be fun, and he's supposed to weigh what he's sending at you that it is a challenge, not a TPK or total party kill for people who haven't heard that term before.
Next term, Legend Master with a J. Can you guess what game that was?
I cannot. Not off the top of my head, no.
The game was called Legendary Adventures with a J.
Oh.
It was written by everyone's favorite, I say that tongue-in-cheek, E. Gary Gygax. Actually, at the time this was like coming out, I was living in Chicago, and my local game store, the guy who ran it, Robert Bigelow was his name. I think I might be misremembering. It was called Friends Hobby. It was in Waukegan, Illinois. He said that he was business partners with Gary on something that was coming up, and I think it was this. So anyway, I don't like it. Again, this is let me come up with my own term because I can. It adds nothing. That's how I feel. How about you?
I knew who it was as soon as you said the game. I looked at it. I even looked through the book once, did not buy it. He was just trying to do an end run around D&D and try to get back his old glory. But for the name, it seems off. It seems like it was being forced into use. Is that a good way to say it?
Yep, that's why I said it's a name just to have its own name. It kind of makes me wonder if you're confusing Legendary Adventures with Dangerous Journeys.
You may
based
be
on
right.
what you're saying. Dangerous Journeys was the first thing he did after TSR. Okay. And he wasn't trying to regain any glory. He was just trying to come up with a better game for that one because he actually started writing that while he was still at TSR. But that's a whole nother story. We could do an episode on that. Although I don't think it would appeal to anyone. I think all of 3 people ever read the game and only 2 of them played it. All right. Next term, moderator. For every reason I like Judge, I like this. It doesn't have the political overhang, political, social, whatever. Doesn't have any of that overhead, and yet somehow it just falls flat for me. I don't know why. I should love it. I don't. How about you?
I'm going to say I love it. I haven't heard that one before, but it fits into what I was saying earlier in our conversation about being someone who's running the game, not trying to win the game.
You might be able to sway me to start using that one. Narrator. This is used in one of the Star Treks. I think it's the Last Unicorn Games version, Lug Trek as we call it. It's used in other story type games. I absolutely positively despise this for the same reason that I despise another one that's coming up. I will save all my hateness for when we talk about that one. But yes, I am not a fan of narrator.
I don't have a problem with it, but it sounds more like the person is leading you down the rails.
Okay, steal my thunder. We'll get there when we get there. Next term is referee. Referee, I love for a number of reasons. For one reason, it's the original term. 1974 Dungeons and Dragons. Pick it up, read it. You will not see the term Dungeon Master show up anywhere in there. It's not in book 1. It's not in book 2. It's not in book 3. I don't even think it's in Greyhawk. It does show up either in Blackmoor or Deities, Demigods, and Heroes, somewhere around there. But even then, it's only in like the introduction or something, because that's when they heard the term Dungeon Masters coming to them from the community. It's a term from the old wargaming community.
Right.
It's used in Traveller and a whole bunch of other games of that era. I like it. It's that guy on the football field, right? He's not a member of either team. He's supporting both. He's just applying the rules, making the calls, and letting the players play. I love this term.
I don't love the term. I can live with the term. It's just back to your earlier answer, very flat.
All right, I can give you that. I'm in favor of flat in some cases, though, because I don't think the term should overshadow the game. But hey, that's me. That's you.
Okay, go on with your next one.
Next term is, I think, Deadlands, called the referee the sheriff, which is just, I don't like it. Again, and then what if you have a sheriff in the town, or one of the players is a sheriff? It's just, I don't like it.
Oh, I love it, especially for Deadlands. There's a series I read of Deadland books, but I'm talking books not associated with the game. But I love that turn. It fits for the game is what I'm going to say, and leave it at that.
All right. And it's the last one on my list, and it's from all those World of Darkness games: Zombie the Apocalypse, Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf the Porny. I don't know what it was. I despise this term, and it's for what you were saying before on narrator. I am a firm believer that the GM should not be telling a story. It's the players who are there to tell the story. It's the player's story. They are the heroes. They are the authors of the story. The GM should not be telling the story. The DM should not be the director. If anything, they are the set designer. They lay everything out. They put the table in the room and the things on the table.
You're stealing my idea now.
See, we agree on things. Yeah, they do all that so the players can pick them up and tell their story. And this is why I don't like big plot lines. I don't like that the heroes have to do anything. It's not my style of play. If the players want to do it, then let them do it. Storyteller, your turn.
I like the term for some of the reasons that you hate it, but back to my idea. The person running the game is supposed to be setting the scene. Yes, they have the backstory. They have all the villains, all the NPCs. That's the end of your list?
Yeah, that's the end of my list. Do you have any that you think I left off?
Yes. One of the games I would love to get into, I've only played it a handful of times, Shadowrun.
See, a game I have never played and I have no desire to play. What do they call the game master in Shadowrun?
Agents. They're running the game, and I'm going to take a moment to explain it. Shadowrun is a game where you hire a team to go and raid a competition's lab to get their secrets, or to take their best scientist and bring him over to your team so he can invent something for the corporation. In Shadowrun, it is all corporations. The world is not government-based per se, but more corporate-based. So it's run by the corporations. So you are attacking other corporations to get their secrets for people. There's much more in depth to that, and we don't have the time to even touch more than what I just said.
All right. So agents, how do I feel about that term? Agents. I don't like it. It sounds more like a player term than a GM term. I get it in the world there. And maybe it works for Shadowrun, but for other games, I would not say, yeah, let me use that term.
Well, like all the games, especially if you get a home game where you've been playing for a year or two, there are going to be terms within the game that no one other than your home players understand. Short nicknames or short jokes or even jargon, which Shadowrun uses a lot of jargon that people get, like chummer. And I'm going to leave it at that.
I don't have anything else to add. How about you?
I believe we covered quite a bit there. We could go for many more minutes on that, but we'll leave it at that.
All right, I'm just going to do that thing I always do at the end where I'm going to say to the listeners, feel free to leave us some feedback if we left out any terms, or let us know what term you like best. Are you a DM diehard? Are you a referee fan? Whatever. Let us know. Leave us feedback. Information is in the outro and in the show notes. We will be back next week. Until then, have a great time. And James, thanks for joining me, and I'll talk to you next week.
You're welcome. Bye.
You're not going to say goodbye to everybody else?
Goodbye to everyone else also.
That's
and
better.
Have a good day.
Have a great one. Take care.
Bye.
You have been listening to the Decahedron Podcast. Send email to feedback@decahedron.com. Remember to spell decahedron with a K. Voice feedback can be sent through the Anchor website or by calling 562-RPG-CAST. That's 562-774-2278. Links are in the show notes. Music is courtesy of Kevin MacLeod, logo by Design Cat. Thanks for listening.